231. Hey class, I'm Louie Nenny. I'm your English instructor for 231. I wanted to do a couple things with this video. First, I wanted to introduce myself on a personal level. Since I've asked you all to do that, least I can do is the same. And I've also want to take just this minute to go over 231 and give you an understanding of what to expect from the class, as well as the readings and just the basics of early American literature. Alright, so first of all, like I said, my name is Louie Nenny. I've taught at JCC going on 4 years now. I've taught this 231 course, I think, for about 2 years. It's something I really enjoy. And as far as personal interests, I'm really into sports. I root for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sorry if you hate them. You got reason, because they're good. I am also very into college football and other sports as well. And so, as far as hobbies, I love books. I don't get time to read them as much as I'd like. I love to work outside in my yard and other things. And as far as favorite pieces of literature, I would say I have two favorites. One that I tell people is Dorian Gray. The other that I really love is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. But at any rate, I do have a family. My wife, her name's Erin. She's a singer. She sings around locally, so if you see her name anywhere, Facebook or wherever, she does sing. Feel free to go out and see her sometimes. The other I have is two sons. They are twins, Jackson and Brady, and they are my guys. They're going to kindergarten this year, so it's a big academic year for me as a parent. So they've been at home for 5 years under the safety umbrella of everything, and now they're grown and going out into the world. So I'm a little nervous, but I'm sure they'll be more than okay. So other than that, not much to tell you. Feel free to find me online as far as email or anything else. Blackboard site, I keep pretty well up to date. And I think the way it's organized has been successful. I've had a lot of compliments on it, so hopefully you guys will feel the same. And as far as discussion board goes, generally I do not add myself into the discussion boards because I've found in the past that people are less comfortable with me in it, and sometimes I read them to give feedback, and sometimes I read them just because I'm interested in what you all have to say. But I do read them, so don't let that go misunderstood. Anyway, as far as everything else goes, I wanted to start off with the class itself. I have a gathering of textbooks here, which will be required to have is the edition. This is the B, this is the A, so you'll have both of those. You should not have 5 books. You should not have 1 book. You should have 2, and it should be the A and the B split up. It's the Norton. That's what they have in the book store over here. The other one you're going to need is the Scarlet Letter. That'll come in the package. This is the critical edition, meaning that it's got all kinds of extra stuff in it that you may or may not read. I'm aware many of you probably read Scarlet Letter before in the past, but we're taking a look at it thematically and using it for a project, and it's a book that I really like and a topic I really enjoy, so I'm using it again for that reason. And so if you do have a copy, if you can download one online, you probably don't need that book. And so what I would recommend is that if you need one with hands-on, to buy that. If not, I've got one on the Blackboard site that is a PDF that you can have for free. And to speak to that a little bit, if there's any issues with the textbooks or the bookstore getting them in, you can certainly get a lot of this online through PDFs. I know a lot of the stuff in the Early American is well past its its rights, so you're welcome to. You can download most of it online in the Kindle store or Amazon or wherever. The last thing that is going to come with your package if you buy it from the bookstore is this book, American Literature, writing about it. We don't have a class in literary analysis, and so I wanted to make sure that you all had something to help you understand literary analysis, because if you don't, the essay questions are particularly difficult in this class. So make sure that you have that resource, at least in some capacity, so that when it comes down to writing, you don't have to be lost, because those are complicated questions, citing text, lots of different things. And I know from a JCC standpoint, you haven't had 113 and you haven't had 131 because we don't offer it, and so you may not have that background in literary analysis. And I'm asking you specifically to do literary analysis. So that book will help, and if you ever have any real questions, feel free to email me or stop by my office. Alright, that's kind of step one and a half maybe. The other thing I wanted to do was discuss the contents of 231. As far as American literature, you get a lot of good stuff in here. You got your founding fathers, Thomas Paine, Common Sense. That stuff's still thrown around a lot with our founding fathers these days. You'll see some Ben Franklin. A lot of his aphorisms will go through, his autobiography. We look at Edgar Allan Poe, and we look at just a lot of different things that are really good and that are really good instrumental pieces in the formation of America. A lot of Equiano piece is really cool because you can see it anywhere. It can be American, it can be British, it can be black lit, it can be African lit, anything it can be. It's really cool. And we're going to take a good look at that. Which kind of brings me to my next point. I think one thing that we have a hard time with early American literature is that when we start out, we look at Columbus. Columbus has a day in America because he discovered America, right? We give him credit for that. He did. He kind of, as far as we know, discovered it. I don't know that you can technically discover something when the Vikings had been there first and everything else. The true winner was Amerigo Vespucci, who realized that he wasn't in the Indies, the West Indies, as Columbus thought. So Columbus really didn't know what he was doing, kind of bumbled into the thing and actually ended up in shame, which is when he came back, they brought him back in fetters and he was shamed. And so, you know, if you ever get a chance to watch a movie about Columbus or anything, it's really a neat perspective because we've always looked at him as this hero who has done all these great things, and the actual life that he led does not necessarily add up to what we think it does. And so what he did was bad. We've got a piece in here that'll talk about it, and that's how America was discovered. And so when Columbus essentially exhausted resources, meaning that the Native Americans couldn't help work anymore, they brought in slaves. So that's also uncomfortable, both to think about, to talk about, and a lot of different things that we look at in early American lit are kind of ugly, kind of dark periods. And so, the country came together. It really did. And one thing we did get right is the religious rights. England, if you look at England's past religiously, people were losing their lives over religion. And in America, that wasn't a thing. And so you've got the right to do whatever you want, religiously speaking, in America, and it took us no time to get that figured out. So we did do some things right, fought really hard, and we look at the founding fathers and the people who signed the Declaration of Independence and what all they went through, and it's really, there's a lot of great people in the history of American literature. And so, you can look at it as America has a dark past, but, all countries have a dark past. If you look back at the beginning of the history in anywhere, I mean, Egypt had slaves, and they, that's who built the pyramids, and we look at the pyramids as some kind of wonder of the world. We don't have to wonder. I know how it got done. But anyway, so like I said, history is just going to be history itself, and we'll spend time looking at literature and looking at the people that are a part of this history and the people that help make it better. So, great things come out of bad places sometimes, and among that is a lot of this literature. And so I like 231 for that reason, because to me, to look at things that make people uncomfortable are interesting, because why? What happened? How did people feel that way? Why were people able to do certain things? And what all came down to it? And so we'll start off with the early American, which is, we'll call it the beginnings. And where did it begin? Well, I mean, technically, America started as this little chunk of Pangea years ago, but then kind of everything happened in the Ice Age and so on and so forth. So what we're really looking at is written literature in a historical context. And so as far as written literature, basically the people that came over here were the French, the Spanish, the English. And so we've got some Spanish, we've got some English, a little bit of French if you want to look at it, but they're mostly up north in the Canadian provinces now, Montreal and such. But at any rate, so we're looking at written history. And so what's interesting to me is that the Native Americans were here first, and the Mayans and everybody, the ones that we fought in Virginia, and basically what happened to them is that their tales were not written, they were oral. and they call it orature, and that's in the book, the orature. And so, you know, the Native Americans may have been around for hundreds of years before Europeans came over, but they didn't write it down, and we can't translate it. And so in the 1800s somewhere, when we started to have an appreciation for that culture, a lot of early Americans wrote it down. They said, tell us your story, and we'll write it down. And so that's how we got what we got. And I'm glad that we did, because it's a really interesting piece to look at how they developed their own history. But anyway, obviously this is not something I can discuss in a matter of I'm looking at my clock here, about 10-15 minutes. So I just wanted to give a brief introduction to 231, because a lot of folks look at it and think that the history is so dark and it's not worth studying, right? We're trying to banish the Confederate flag because it's ugly, and maybe we should. Should be in a museum. Maybe it should be in different contexts. I can't speak to that, but what I can speak to is that it's worth knowing about and it's worth studying because it's our history. And so as we look at those things, we'll go through them. You know, we won't shy away from anything because it's ugly. And so that's all I can guarantee you. All right, I think that's about it. Basically, make sure you have the text. I made it so that the week 1 discussion board does not require the text. So if you don't get the textbook until the end of the week, next weekend, you'll be just fine. All right, if you have any questions, my email is available. You can reach me however you need to. Stop by my office. I'm over in Smith, and I'll be glad to help however I can. All right, folks. I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to your discussion boards, and I will see you all in cyberspace.